Marriage is a sacred sacrament according to the teachings of the Catholic Church. Most often, the vows spoken during the procession include, "Take this ring as a sign of my love and fidelity." Unfortunately, not all practice fidelity. One of the problems faced by many married couples is when one of the spouses commits infidelity in the forms of adultery and concubinage.
Adultery and concubinage are crimes which are both defined and penalized under Title 11 of the Revised Penal Code. These crimes are considered crimes against chastity. Adultery under Article 333 of the Revised Penal Code provides that it is committed by any married woman who shall have sexual intercourse with a man who is not her husband. The crime of concubinage under Article 334 is committed by any married man. One, if the married man keeps a mistress in the conjugal dwelling. When the married man shall have sexual intercourse under scandalous circumstances with a woman who is not his wife. And the third mode would be if the married man cohabits with this woman in any other place.
In a survey conducted by the National Statistics Office, fewer Filipinos are getting married. In 2011, less than 470,500 marriages were registered, 10,000 less than that was recorded in 2010. In fact, the number of registered marriages has been declining since 2009. Unfortunately, a spouse's infidelity is not a valid reason to file for an annulment. The Church recognizes marriage as a union between two people sanctified by God, while the country recognizes marriage as the foundation of the family and shall therefore be protected by the state according to Section 2 of Article 15 of the Philippine Constitution. For the better understanding of Filipinos everywhere and for the protection of marriages and families, we need to define adultery and concubinage and the gravity that these acts bring. Are these acts criminal or civil in nature? If they are criminal, what are the penalties for those who commit them? And how can an offended spouse file a case against the offending parties? Good evening. You are watching Legal Help Desk on Night TV. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight we will discuss your legal rights on adultery and concubinage, what you need to know about these criminal acts against chastity and marriage, and what you need to do should you ever need to file a case against your offending spouse and his or her paramour.
Our guests for tonight are Attorney Jonathan Arrojado and Attorney Russell Alabado. Good evening and thank you for being with us tonight, gentlemen.
Good evening, Attorney Karen. Good evening, Attorney Rod.
All right, perhaps we'll start off with the difference. Now, we at the intro we already had the definition of adultery and concubinage, but maybe I can ask you, Nat, what can you highlight the differences between adultery and concubinage?
Yes, Attorney Rod, that's a good question for our viewers. The main difference is the one who commits adultery and vis-a-vis the one who commits concubinage. The one who commits adultery, as defined in the law, is the married woman who has sexual intercourse with a man who is not her husband. And in concubinage, it is the married man, the husband, who has sexual intercourse under the three modalities or the three ways. And with a woman who is not his wife. That's the primary difference in between adultery and concubinage.
I guess being the only female in this group right now, I find it very unfair, but I'll highlight the main difference.
I'm sure you have a lot of questions.
Yes, and I'll highlight for the benefit of female viewers out there, the main difference. Basically, for women like me, and I'm married, as soon as I commit, I will commit adultery as soon as I sleep with another man who's not my husband.
That's true.
And each count of having sexual intercourse with a guy who's not my husband is one act of adultery, right?
That is correct.
So meaning if I sleep with someone else twice, then the penalty of...
It's twice over.
Exactly.
Those are two charges already.
Two charges already.
Correct.
But for men, basically you have to prove that there are three attending circumstances.
Yes.
That's correct.
I mean any of the three. Either they have sexual intercourse under scandalous
They
circumstances.
kept a mistress in the conjugal dwelling, or if not in the conjugal dwelling, the husband slept with her in some other place or cohabited with her in some other place.
So in other words, like if I catch, for instance, my husband sleeping with another woman, I cannot file a case for concubinage against either of them.
That's not concubinage.
Yes. Attorney Russell?
In that case, even if the husband has sexual intercourse with a woman, not his wife, that is not concubinage if you don't fall under those three circumstances.
Okay. Now, the question is this a case that I can only file against my wife? For example, if my wife has an affair with a married husband or a man who's married, can I file? I don't want to file a case against my wife, but I'll file a case against the paramour or the boyfriend of my wife, and I know he's married. I'll file a case of adultery against him. Is that possible?
In these two crimes, according to the law, Attorney Rod, you need to put the two culprits together in the same information.
Okay.
Otherwise, the case will not prosper. As they say, it takes two to tango, you know.
Yeah, in this case, we need two people. Attorney Russell, another question would be, the provision of the law is very specific. For adultery, it says having sexual intercourse with a man who is not your husband. So for instance, if a married woman is caught having an affair or having sexual intercourse with another woman or a lesbian, will that be sufficient to file a case against both the wife and her lover, who's also a female?
No, because right now, in our law, it's very specific. The sexual intercourse should only happen with another man, not with the same sex.
Okay, so
and
we
goes
haven't
both
changed
ways.
the...
For concubinage, it has to be with another woman. It can't be your husband cheating on you with a homosexual partner.
That is correct.
Okay, I'll throw this question because I think, as mentioned by Karen, it's kind of unfair. And I guess our viewers want to find out. And we got some questions from social media. Why is it so unfair? Why is it that for a man, you need three things, diba? Either you cohabit with the paramour, you have sex in scandalous circumstances, or you take her into the conjugal home. You have to have those three elements, whereas for the wife, you only need to prove that she had sexual intercourse and she can already go to jail. Can you explain, or are there theories why there's such a difference between the two
One of the
cases?
theories there, Attorney Rod, is before, you have to understand the law is archaic already. It was drafted in 1930s, I believe. And one of the what was sought to be protected before was so that no foreign blood of another man will be introduced, which will be supported by the husband.
Okay.
I have another theory, Rod. At that time, 1930s, basically Congress was made up of all men. I haven't heard of a female congresswoman at that time.
No,
Yeah, but this was based. Our law was based. Was this U.S. law or
No,
Spanish?
this is during the Spanish. If you look at the penalties, they're written in
it was
Spanish.
codified at the time, but it was way before, really.
So, yeah.
And maybe if I may add, with respect to concubinage, it's the nature of the crime. By itself, it's the keeping of a mistress in a specific place. So the sexual intercourse there is not the primary reason for the offense, but having a mistress and in a specific place where it creates a scandal. So that's the reason why we have a separate offense for concubinage for a married man.
Another issue I want to bring up would be this exempting or justifying circumstance under our laws, wherein if you catch, for instance, your wife, actually it does not even fall under exempting or justifying circumstance. It's basically one of those where if you catch your wife having sexual intercourse with another man, and you, the husband, end up killing either the wife or the paramour, there's really no criminal offense there, right? Which is not available if it happens in the reverse, if it's the wife catching the husband. Can you elaborate on this?
on that? Yeah.
Well, that's death under exceptional circumstances. Well, again, that's a law that our legislator wants to amend. In that instance, if you catch your wife in the act or immediately thereafter, you can actually kill
the person,
one or both of them, and the law does not impose a severe penalty, just banishment or destierro.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, when I was reading the background of this law, it's not even meant to be a penalty on the husband that kills either the wife or the paramour or both. It's actually for the protection of the husband, so that there would be no retaliation from either of the wife or the paramour.
But
it doesn't go both ways. So let me warn the female wives out there.
Don't go kill your husband.
Yes, don't kill your husband, even if you catch them in the act of cheating on you or having intercourse with someone else.
Yeah, but I think there's I think there is some kind of provision there, where a qualifier, if you will, that the killing of your wife. I think it also applies for a father who sees his minor daughter, right, having sex as well. But that's a different topic because we're talking about adultery, right? So in this case, a husband kills his wife in the act. Now, there are cases wherein umalis muna siya, he cooled his head or tried to gather his thoughts, then came back and killed them. What is the situation in that regard? Because it's not immediate killing.
Yes, the law provides, Attorney Rod, that it's clearly specified that immediately thereafter or right there and then, in flagrante delicto, when you caught them right there and then, or immediately thereafter. It provides that because otherwise, evident premeditation might seep in, wherein you really planned to kill, and hence that would not be covered by the law anymore because it does not cover the situation where you got enraged when you saw that.
So the assumption is that you acted out of passion or rage,
that's right.
which
So that's what exempts you.
Which obfuscates your thoughts.
When you went away and then you sharpened your knife or you had to load the gun, that's different already.
All right.
Very interesting topic so far.
Wow.
Okay, we still have a lot to discuss. Legal Help Desk will return after these messages. For many Filipinos, infidelity is the be-all, end-all of any relationship, including marriage. In fact, it has been recorded by the Office of the Solicitor General that an average of 28 couples per day want to have their marriages declared null and void. In 2012, it has been recorded that more than 10,500 annulment cases were brought before the OSG. Unfortunately, many are not aware that infidelity is not a valid reason for an annulment or to legally declare a marriage as null and void. Under the Civil Code of the Philippines, infidelity is a valid reason for a married couple to file for legal separation.
Or adultery or concubinage is not a ground for annulment. No, it's not one of the grounds under Family Code for the institution or for the filing of an annulment case. No? However, sexual infidelity is a valid ground for legal separation.
However, it is possible to file a case of annulment if it has been discovered that one of the spouses has an incurable sexually transmitted disease.
If one of the party is afflicted with a sexually transmissible disease which appears to be serious and incurable in nature, then that is a ground for annulment.
If you need to file a case against your spouse, whether for adultery or concubinage, or for annulment or legal separation, always consult a lawyer to discuss your legal options. You're still watching Legal Help Desk on 9TV with our guests, Attorney Jonathan Arrojado and Attorney Russell Alabado.
Okay, attorneys, let's discuss penalties now. There seems to be an impression. I don't know. Perhaps it's just our society. No? I mean, we have celebrities, we have politicians who have openly adulterous relationships, diba? They have girlfriends and all that. But this is a serious thing, right? This is a serious crime. Can we talk about possible penalties for adultery and concubinage?
For adultery, the penalty there is up to 6 years.
6 years?
Yes.
So one sexual act?
one
Of
sexual act.
indiscretion.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's from 2 years, 4 months, and 1 day up to 6 years.
Wow. So if you had sex several times, I mean,
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, that
yes.
for each one it counts
Yes.
as one
Yes.
offense. But
Okay.
for concubinage, is it the same?
Concubinage is lower. The maximum penalty is up to 4 years. So that's the difference when you
Lower by
respect
2
to
years, that's a
penalty.
lot.
That's a lot. Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. And then, obviously, with this old law on adultery and concubinage, it's very hard for the woman to file anything, any criminal case against the husband. But under the new Violence Against Women and Their Children law, it seems that there's also a way for women to get legal remedies against a cheating husband.
Yes.
Maybe can you explain to us what remedies there are for women if they find their husband cheating on them?
With respect to violence against women and children, if the infidelity of the husband already constitute a psychological abuse on the part of the wife, then definitely she can file a case under that Violence Against Women and Children Act.
And in this case, it's the husband that can go to jail for cheating.
That is correct.
But for there to be psychological abuse, what types of perhaps indicators or factors are needed?
It's very subjective. It depends on how the infidelity of the husband affected the wife. So this can lead to the wife being abandoned. There's no more support, being humiliated from her friends. So this can constitute psychological violence on the wife.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about defense, no? Kasi one of the elements, I think, in adultery is that the paramour or the lover of the wife, has knowledge of the fact that she's married, right? So can that paramour or lover of the wife say that I didn't know she was married. She never told me, and I never knew. Is that a defense?
It's not exactly a defense per se, but if we're going to go by the definition of the law, it's one of the so-called elements to be proved that the paramour knew that the wife was married at the time that they had sexual intercourse. By that very definition, if it's going to be a matter of proof already in court that if he can prove that he did not know, he could be absolved from that. Yes.
But the wife can still be punished.
It would be a matter for the courts already to...
So there can be a situation where the wife is convicted, but
Yes.
the paramour, the lover, is...
Yes,
All right.
as long as you file the case against both of them, as previously discussed.
All right.
Okay.
All right, we have some questions from our viewers. Amanda asked us, I'm separated from my husband for 3 years because of the physical and emotional abuse I suffered while we were together. I have a boyfriend now, and my husband was upset when he learned about it, even though he has had a slew of girlfriends after we separated. Can he file a case against me? And if he does, can I file a case against him too? So,
Okay. This is pretty common. Like usually people, when they're already separated for several years, they end up having different relationships.
Yes.
And they just assume that's okay. But perhaps this is something that we can clarify with our viewers.
Regarding I'll take the adultery part. If sexual intercourse on the part of the Amanda was proven by the husband and all the other requisites are there, the husband could file a case for adultery against her. But assuming that we have to clarify if Amanda only meant boyfriend in terms of
boyfriend.
just-
Holding hands now.
holding hands,
Okay.
kissing.
Yeah, so regardless, it can be an affair where you have a relationship, but as long as there's no sexual intercourse, no criminal case can be filed against the wife.
Yes.
Okay.
With respect to the husband, what was stated was a slew of girlfriends.
Yes, look, girlfriends.
Having a lot of girlfriends
Yeah,
is
it's-
not concubinage.
It's not concubinage, okay.
So to be
All right.
concubinage, a girlfriend or the girlfriends must be in the status of a mistress. You keep that girlfriend inside the conjugal dwelling. You have sexual intercourse with that girlfriend under scandalous circumstances, or you cohabit with that girlfriend. Without those circumstances, you cannot file concubinage.
Yung slew of girlfriends ba, is that a ground for psychological I guess,
It can
vowsy,
be,
vowsy,
but
yeah,
probably,
psychological
yeah.
abuse or something.
Perhaps I think vowsy because
Vowsy,
if
yeah.
it's blatant and
Blatant,
it causes
womanizing.
Psychological
mental
abuse, mental
disturbance or damage to the wife, then perhaps, right?
At the end of the day, it depends on the effect on the wife.
Yes, okay.
All right.
We have another question from Iris. I suspected my husband of cheating for a year now, and I finally have my proof. I saw pictures of him and his mistress, as well as pictures of them with his friends on Facebook. I also read and copied the messages they exchanged when he left his phone at the house. On days he said he had important out-of-town business meetings, he was actually with her and staying at her condo. Are these enough for me to file a case of concubinage against him? This is very common to catch people on Facebook.
Yeah,
So,
on Facebook.
but in this case,
yeah.
will that be concubinage where
Right.
he would stay at her apartment, at the mistress's apartment?
In concubinage, the circumstance of cohabiting, cohabitation there implies a certain amount of a period of time. If you just go there to have fun with your girlfriend, have coffee,
Yeah, or-
then that's not concubinage.
Okay.
But if you stay there for a week, a month, then that's will constitute. Yes, that's cohabitation.
There has to be some period of
Yes.
regularity, permanency.
Correct.
Okay. So, anyway, we have another question from RJ. Let's watch this.
Saan po dapat magsampa ng kasong adultery at concubinage?
And saan dapat magsampa ng kaso for adultery and
Attorney
concubinage?
Rod, for RJ, sa regional trial courts, you file the case there. But before that, you file it, because it's a criminal case, you file it with the fiscal's office.
Okay.
But if it's violence against women and their children law that you're using, then you can go to where?
It depends on the protection order that you want to receive immediately.
Okay.
You can go to the fiscal's office, NBI.
NBI.
Yes.
Any
Okay.
women's help
Or
desk.
to the barangay.
Any circumstances where you
If you
file in
want
the
to.
barangay?
Yeah, I think you can go to the barangay if you want a
For
barangay,
the barangay protection order.
Yes.
So I guess it's a faster way to do it.
Okay.
Thank you, and very interesting again so far. But for now, we'll have to take a short break. Legal Help Desk will return, so stay tuned. You're still tuned in to Legal Help Desk on 9TV with our guests, Attorney Jonathan Arrojado and Attorney Russell Alabado.
Okay, we still have a couple of questions from our viewers. From Eddie. My mother would like to file a case of concubinage against my father. The mistress is also married, and we are convincing the husband to file a case of adultery against her. How much would it cost? What other charges can we file against them? All right, so did you get that the scenario?
Well, in this case, I think they're being smart. They're trying, instead
trying
of
all
doing
angles.
it the way
Yes.
around, which is going to be harder to file it against the dad, they're having the...
I actually
mistress
have a case like that. It's way compounded already. I think it's 6 cases.
Wow.
Because the wife, there were two mistresses, and then
Two mistresses.
each one was helping each other
Okay.
against the guy. And I think Andy, is it Andy? Or
yeah.
the caller already enumerated, he can file adultery, and then they can prevail upon the family of the husband,
Of the husband.
to file
An adultery case.
an adultery case against
Yeah.
it's like a two-prong attack.
Two-prong attack.
Right
That's
there.
possible.
Yes, it's possible.
Okay.
If they cooperate with you.
How
well,
much
then
normally, in his question also asked for cost, how much normally does it cost to file either adultery or
Of course,
concubinage
we know your
against a
legal fees are
spouse?
probably different. But,
good. Yeah.
No, if you file it before the prosecutor's office, the prosecutor will file the case and actually prosecute the case. So you can have the prosecutor as your lawyer, and it's free.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
We have another question, and it's from Andy. I have a boyfriend who is married to his wife for 11 years. We met at an organization we are both members of. We've been seeing each other for a year, and the wife finally found out. I don't regret my actions, but I am concerned of the scandal it would bring once she files a case against us. If and when she does file a case against me and my boyfriend, will this be publicized? Will I be imprisoned for this?
Well, Attorney Karen, most of these cases usually they flow below the radar unless one of the parties really gung-ho about it
They'll
and
go to
really
a
rabid and
go to a
pushing it.
newspaper. Yeah.
And
Or maybe one of them is a celebrity or at least high profile,
yes.
right?
Well, Anbi should be aware that a case is public. It's public record. So nothing stopping the wife from publicizing it if she should choose to do so.
If a criminal case, for instance, is filed against Anbi and her boyfriend, can it happen that a whole departure order can be issued against them? Meaning, if she wanted to travel, and the criminal case is filed against her.
Well, that would be part of the process. She can apply for that. In fact, if violence against women is part of the case that that was filed, then whole departure order may also be
possible.
Yes.
All right. Okay, we have another question, this time from Miles. Is a video or a picture of the wife being intimate with her paramour still necessary in order to file a case of adultery against her? And I wanted to follow up question. This is a practical type of question because usually, as we know, when you file a case, you need evidence, you need proof. But most of the time, I would say practically all of the time,
yes.
When you file for adultery and it's about sexual intercourse, obviously by the wife, normally this is done in private.
Yes.
More often than not. No? So how do you go about proving that? And just to answer her question, videos and pictures, they're probably
She
proof.
said pictures
So,
being intimate,
Yeah.
but if it doesn't constitute sexual intercourse,
Okay.
It's going to be harder
there's a defense
than that.
there.
All right.
Because
So-
again, just having a relationship without sexual intercourse, even
that's-
for the
yes.
women, is
We go by
not
the definition.
adultery.
definition of sexual intercourse. No?
there's a
The
defense if
actual sex.
that's what you're asking.
And I guess we have to also notify our viewers that we have the anti-wiretapping law. So if you're trying to catch your husband cheating on you and you just basically wiretap their phone, you can't really use that as evidence against them, right?
Okay, is it legal to, let's say, hire a private investigation and he takes shots of them privately?
Yes.
So that's
Yes,
possible.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, it
All
is.
right.
Just have them followed and
Yeah,
stop.
yeah, have them followed. Okay, all right.
We have another video question, and this is from Cesar.
Pwede bang magsampa ng kaso ang mga kamag-anak laban sa mga taong nangangaliwa?
Okay. So in this case, it's not one of the spouses, but relatives of one of the spouses filing a case against the cheating spouse.
No, because for adultery and concubinage, the complaint must be initiated by the offended spouse only.
It's a personal crime. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if actually if you forgive your spouse,
If you
then
desist,
yes,
you pardon-
for instance,
you pardon.
for one
Or pardon or
specific
consent
act. Oo.
before initiating the case, or you desist afterwards, there's no more case.
so basically the prosecutor can't go ahead if you say you forgive.
Because they need the private, it is a private offense, unlike all the other crimes which are public offenses, wherein the need for the private offended party is very paramount. If the private offended party will not go through with it, there will be no case filed.
So no more offense. All right. Now there's a Twitter question from Watson. Can I file a case of adultery against the paramour? Only against the paramour. I'm willing to overlook my wife's indiscretion for the sake of our children. Is that
Very
possible?
common
So
question.
hindi buy one take one. Basically, it's I'll just
Selective.
Love niya pa.
Selective.
Love niya pa yung
Love
wife.
niya pa, yes.
Oh, love
No,
niya pa yung wife.
Attorney Rod, you have to file the case against your wife and the
And-
lover.
And if you've already filed the case and you have it dismissed against the wife, for instance, is that possible?
The pardon should also
cover.
extend to the paramour. If the pardon is only with respect to the wife, then the case will not be dismissed against the wife.
Okay, so
All right.
at least you really have to decide. Jamie asked, my wife is an OFW in London and I learned that she has a British boyfriend there and is living with him. Can I file a case of adultery against her? Will this prosper given the circumstances that she is in another country? We have that question. That's a very interesting question because our criminal laws are territorial,
Territoriality.
meaning
Correct.
it has to be committed within the Philippines.
Yes.
So if the wife is abroad, and we have a lot of OFWs,
Yeah.
can the husband file a case for adultery
He
against
can file,
the
but
wife?
whether or not it
It
will
will prosper.
prosper is another matter.
They can. She can file.
Yes,
He can file.
Actually, you can file anything that you want, but whether or not it will prosper is a whole different thing. Because as Attorney Karen,
The situs of the case.
yes, as Attorney Karen mentioned, Attorney Rod, that we are governed by the principle of territoriality. So,
Yeah. So where crime has to have been committed here.
yes.
All right. All right. So our last question is from Beverly. My husband left me about, after 5 years of marriage. He is an American citizen, but we got married here and have been living here since. He left me for a transgender, and he has been living with her for him, I guess, for 6 months. Can I file a case against him, her? What does the law say about the husband's committing infidelity with a third sex? But this is transgender.
I like how you were getting confused. Him or her?
Very hard for me to. Hard
So
for me to. I thought it
again,
was a typo.
well, the law is clear that
Yeah.
it has to be another
Natural
woman, right?
born,
So in
yes.
this case,
Woman,
It will not prosper.
not prosper. Transgender,
No.
Yes.
but woman na siya.
Yes.
Woman na siya. Even
Still,
if,
The law does
Yes.
not provide Attorney Rod, so we do not make a distinction yet. There are moves to amend the law,
Correct.
but right now, there's no provision for this situation.
Okay. Okay. Are there again going back? No, we didn't get to answer it fully. We talked about pictures and videos. What other proof can I have? Can I present to the court? Let's say if I have suspicions that my wife is committing adultery. What I mean, like testimonial evidence with that.
Text messages.
Affidavits, the
Affidavits
usual.
of witnesses, all other circumstantial evidence may be accepted to prove the adultery.
I think in my experience, even the testimony of a friend who saw a picture on Facebook that
Exactly.
would
Yeah.
show circumstances that they were having a relationship.
Pregnancy in itself would be.
Well, yes, unless you were the one who got the wife pregnant.
Yes,
There's a case there.
that's right. Okay.
A very interesting topic,
Yes.
gentlemen, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Attorney
Attorney
Karen.
Arrojado
Attorney
and Attorney
It's our
Alabado.
privilege.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you.
Legal Help Desk will return after this short break. Welcome back to Legal Help Desk on 9TV. And today we had a very
Touchy.
controversial and relevant topic.
Yeah.
And I think one of the first things for me that we should emphasize to our viewers out there, usually if there has been a long time separation between the spouses, they
Right.
feel like they can have relationships with other people.
Yeah, that seems to
so. Just as a warning,
usual practice,
yes, especially
Yeah.
if it's been 10 years. I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? But for our viewers out there, please be very careful because even if you've been separated for 10 years, as long as you're still married, meaning you haven't had an annulment, then you run the risk, if you're a woman, of having a case for adultery filed against you, which would have a penalty of up to 6 years. And if you're a man, then if you're especially cohabiting with someone or having sex under scandalous circumstances or putting that mistress in the same house as your wife's house, then you will be prosecuted for concubinage, which has a penalty of up to 4 years.
Yes, and these crimes, we shouldn't take them lightly. No? And this is kind of ironic. We're a Catholic country, but it's, as Karen mentioned, it's quite common among people who are separated, who have boyfriends and girlfriends. We see it among our politicians, our celebrities. But yes, the penalties are quite stiff. For adultery, for example, it can be one act of adultery. All right, one sexual act by a married woman can be from 2 years to 6 years. All right,
Yes.
and then concubinage 4 years, as much as 4 years. Of course, it's tougher to prove concubinage. It's harder to actually commit it. Because as mentioned by Karen, no, you have to have sex in scandalous circumstances and you have to cohabit. But at any rate, I think what's important here is that we shouldn't take these crimes lightly. And there's always a chance, if you are unfaithful to your spouse, that there can be a criminal case against you. But it's very, very important also to point out that in adultery, you have to file a case against both the wife, the cheating wife, and the paramour. No? So it's both. However, you can also withdraw. All right?
And also, lastly, it's very important that you know that if you catch your husband or your wife cheating on you, this is not an automatic ground to file for annulment. So again, annulment really has only one ground, which is psychological incapacity. So even if you catch your husband or your wife cheating on you, it does not automatically translate to a right to file an annulment case against them. Legal separation can be a ground.
All right. All right. Over the week, we have received some questions and comments from our viewers. Our first recap question is from Lloyd. What legal action can we do if a relative refuses to give my mother's share to the land owned by the now deceased grandparents? There was no will left by either of them. All right.
In this case, it depends. First, try to find out if your mother's relatives or siblings have already executed what you call an extrajudicial partition, because you mentioned there was no will. And one, if this was already registered. So if there's an extrajudicial partition, then you have within 2 years from the execution of that extrajudicial partition to file a petition to have that declared void. And also for your mother to file a petition to claim her share with that property. Again, if there has been no extrajudicial partition, then your mother can go to the Register of Deeds and annotate her claim for that property.
Yeah, and also if there has been no extrajudicial partition, if they're just staying there in the properties, then probably you can file for an extrajudicial partition and request for an extrajudicial partition for the properties of your grandparents, all right?
Our next recap question is from 7. We filed a complaint of theft against an employee. We have physical evidence, a witness affidavit, and even the confession of the employee admitting to theft. But the employee filed a counter affidavit. The fiscal sided with her even when she does not have enough evidence to prove her innocence. How should we move forward with this?
Now, in this case, usually you appeal or you go up the DOJ.
Yeah.
The
First, file a motion for
yes.
reconsideration with the prosecutor's office. And if this is denied, then you can appeal this to the office of the Department of Justice.
Yeah. They oversee the decisions of the fiscals, the prosecutors. All right, now on to the comments we received from our viewers from Twitter, user @PrincessLay. I always watch your show. It's very helpful. All the best. Thank you, @PrincessLay.
From Josie, I watch your show and it is very educational. The information is very simple to understand and can be used in our daily lives. Keep up the good work. More power.
And lastly, from Twitter user @Mr. Carlo Pascual. Because of your program, people now know the difference between theft and robbery. #good job. All right, that's all the time that we have for tonight. Thank you for your comments. We would like to thank our viewers who send us their legal questions via social media. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. If you have any questions about our topic for tonight, you may post these on our Facebook and Twitter pages. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights. Good night. Married couples is when one of the spouses commits infidelity in the forms of adultery and concubinage.
Adultery and concubinage are crimes which are both defined and penalized under Title 11 of the Revised Penal Code. These crimes are considered crimes against chastity. Adultery under Article 333 of the Revised Penal Code provides that it is committed by any married woman who shall have sexual intercourse with a man who is not her husband. The crime of concubinage under Article 334 is committed by any married man. One, if the married man keeps a mistress in the conjugal dwelling. When the married man shall have sexual
Marriage is a sacred sacrament according to the teachings of the Catholic Church. Most often, the vows spoken during the procession include, "Take this ring as a sign of my love and fidelity." Unfortunately, not all practice fidelity. One of the problems faced by many recognizes marriage as the foundation of the family and shall therefore be protected by the state according to Section 2 of Article 15 of the Philippine Constitution. For the better understanding of Filipinos everywhere and for the protection of marriages and families, we need to define adultery and concubinage and the gravity that these acts bring. Are these acts criminal or civil in nature? If they are criminal, what are the penalties for those who commit them? And how can an offended spouse file a case against the offending parties? Good evening. You are watching Legal Help Desk on Night TV. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Tonight we will discuss your legal rights on adultery and concubinage, what you need to know about these criminal acts against chastity and marriage, and what you need to do should you ever need to file a case against your offending spouse and his or her paramour.
Our guests for tonight are Attorney Jonathan Arrojado and Attorney Russell Alabado. Good evening and thank you for being with us tonight, gentlemen.
Good evening, Attorney Karen. Good evening, Attorney Rod.
All right, perhaps we'll start off with the difference. Now, at the intro, we already had the definition of adultery and concubinage, but maybe I can ask you, Nat, what can you highlight the differences between adultery and concubinage?
Yes, Attorney Rod, that's a good question for our viewers.
Intercourse under scandalous circumstances with a woman who is not his wife. And the third mode would be if the married man cohabits with this woman in any other place.
In a survey conducted by the National Statistics Office, fewer Filipinos are getting married. In 2011, less than 470,500 marriages were registered, 10,000 less than that was recorded in 2010. In fact, the number of registered marriages has been declining since 2009. Unfortunately, a spouse's infidelity is not a valid reason to file for an annulment. The Church recognizes marriage as a union between two people sanctified by God, while the country